Hello and welcome to this review of the IBM 601-9284-62 key Model F Kishsaver keyboard. This keyboard is on loan to me from the same person who also loaned me the Space Cadet keyboard, and yes, it's an original one, not a reproduction. It's also not been restored yet, which is why it's a little bit dirty. The board was nicknamed the Kishsaver in honor of Geek Hack member Kishi, who first brought it to the community's attention. It's one of 4 different models that could be supplied with the IBM 4704 terminal, which itself was a part of the IBM 4700 Finance Communication System, which is a fancy name for banking computer. These keyboards were used for a variety of roles. It's not the smallest in the series. The Model 100, which is this thing, had only 50 keys, lending it its moniker of F50. That one was intended for teller's work and was more of a configurable function keyboard, hence why it came with religible keycaps, and it didn't support alphanumeric output. They later made a well-known Model M version of that keyboard as well that some people have reworked into a giant macropad. The F62 is therefore the smallest alphanumeric Model F, designed for, according to IBM, teller, back office or administrative personnel, and may be used alone or in conjunction with the function keyboard. Now, I've featured several Models F on this channel before: the XT, which is the original kinda, the AT, which came after that, and the famous battleship, the F122, which is this enormous thing over here. And every time I did an F review, basically the conclusion was that it's magnificent, but the layout might take some getting used to, and that it's not exactly small. The F62, however, uses a layout that's very compact as just the alphanumeric area, nothing more, and it sports a layout that's kinda similar to that of the Happy Hacking keyboard, which is a well-known space-saving Topra board. Being a terminal board, it did have some funny legends, and it's a great example of a keyboard where enter and return are not the same key, although nowadays the distinction is almost completely lost. Back in the old days though, the return key just put the cursor at the beginning of the next line, while enter actually entered a command. To give you an example of how the distinction could be used today, imagine if you're in a chat window, then return wouldn't send the message, but instead would go to the next line, and enter would send it, for example. There's also still the distinction between a front tab and a back tab, both of which were common keys on terminals at the time. The Battleship also has similar functions, although it uses them in a different layout. Still, the Kishsaver used some kind of serial plug on a rather long straight cord too, by the way, so you'd have to do a conversion job anyway, which means you could program the board to your liking. Anyway, a few more details about the keyboard. Here's the model sticker. I appreciate it's very hard to see on camera and it's very faded, but you can still make it out in person, showing an ID number affiliating itself with the 4704 terminal, model 200 and part number 601-9284, made in week 26 of 1983 in the USA by IBM of Armonk, New York, which is where they're headquartered. At the back, you can see that the 2 little feet are missing, and there's this thing here, which you'll never guess what it is if you know anything about the switches it uses. But believe it or not, it's a volume button, because yes, it came with an electronic beeper, which, believe me, it really doesn't need. Now, as for the comparative build quality of the keyboard, I'm actually going to express it solely in weight for once. So let's just look at some 60% keyboards that are being sold right now, yeah? So here's a KB Paradise V60, 1.2 pounds, a Vortex Poker, 2 pounds, a Ducky Maya Pro, well technically there's more of a 65% keyboard, but whatever, 2.29 pounds, a heavy fucker. The Mistel Barocco, one of the split things, 1.1 pounds, that's a trim one. The Varmilo V68M, again more of a 65% one, 2.3 pounds. The Leopold FC660M, another one, 1.6 pounds. And to complete the lineup, the HHKB Pro 2 at 1 lb 3 Oz. Because a system of measurements is always better when you need 2 different units to express one thing. Anyway, in short, they range from half a kilo to 1 full kilo. The Kishsaver is a Model F, so it is not a kilo. Let me drop you a small hint. I honestly didn't believe my eyes when I first saw this, but it's 2.8 fucking kilos. or 6 Lubs 2.7 Oz. This is just, wow, Jesus twinkle tits Christ, that's insane! For reference, that's almost half again as much as a typical blue badge Model M. So, in other words, this tiny thing goes into 1.5 of these. What? This weight comes from the case, which is cast zinc, and it's 1.6 millimeters thick on the top case and fully 3 times as thick on the bottom case, 4.8 millimeters. That's right, this bottom case alone at 930 grams weighs almost as much as the heaviest 60% on that list. Of course, the electroplated rainbow steel chassis and barrel plate is nothing to scoff at either. The keycaps are nothing surprising, they're the standard IBM thick PBT keycaps with dye-sublimed lettering, which are of course completely excellent. Like most Model F caps, they're the single-piece variant. Similarly, the switches should be familiar to many of you by now. They're IBM's capacitive buckling springs, which made the second spot in my top 5 best ever clicky switches video, and honestly, I doubt they'll move off of that position anytime soon. These pingy bastards are all but perfect. The sound they make is a little shallow for some, and entirely too loud for others, but seriously, apart from any reservations some might have with the sound, I can barely imagine what criticism someone could have against them. They're smooth, fantastically crisp, nicely mid-weighted, rated to 100 million key presses per switch, and being capacitive, of course they have inherent N-key rollover. Now, like I said, this one is unrestored, so there are some small issues. For example, the spacebar rattles because of a problem with the stabilizer, and using my keyboarding superpowers, I've managed to work out what the exact problem with the stabilizer is. It's missing. Still, despite some small niggles, I'm sure this would fetch some serious dosh at auction, because these things are super rare, and above all, space-saving, so obviously the price can only skyrocket as a result. So, conclusion time, what do I think of it? Well, it's obviously amazing. I mean, judging by all the superlatives I've dropped so far in the review, you guys probably know what time it is by now. I mean, it's literally the Model F of the 60% keyboards. So apart from being priced much higher than any commercial 60% keyboard out there, it's also bound to be infinitely better. Of course, that's not really fair. We're talking about an IBM machine here. How could all these relatively low-budget trinkets out there nowadays possibly hold a candle to this child of the Colossus of Armonk? Finally, one thing I obviously ought to mention, as people have been linking me this constantly for over a year, is Ellipsis Project at modelfkeyboards.com, where he's made reproductions of the Kishsaver, as well as its slightly bigger brother, the F77. Now, you can buy these in beige, industrial grey or black, and with ANSI, ISO or HHKB layout, and it comes with a USB plug as well. Now, I don't have one of these, so obviously I can't say how close it comes to the original, but it's intended as a genuine repro, so I suspect it should be pretty close. Unless you provide your own keys, price start at $360, which is both very cheap for a Kishsaver and very expensive for a keyboard. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And following is a typing demonstration of me typing on this keyboard.